Hi, everyone. We're just getting this webinar underway. We'll give everyone a few more moments to load in, and then we'll get started. Thanks for joining. Okay, let's get things started there, Stephanie. I'll ask you to do the introductions.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Guigno. I'm the EYE Product Manager here at the Learning Bar. Welcome to the third session of the Building Leaders and Readers Literacy webinar series. We're excited to have you join us today for an interactive show and tell of the Confident Learners program, which aims to make literacy instruction clear, effective, and engaging. The session will guide you through our unique three-phase model, highlighting how we support educators at every step to create confident, skilled readers. Through real-world examples, engaging resources, and actionable data insights, you'll see firsthand how Confident Learners simplifies complex literacy instruction, making it accessible for educators and impactful for students. Whether you're looking to enhance your current literacy approach or explore new solutions, this webinar provides an insider's view of a program that transforms literacy outcomes from the ground up. I did want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and a member of our team will ensure that everyone receives the recording in an email afterwards. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional ancestral territory of the First Nations people in our respective locations on which we are learning, working, and gathering today. We pay our respects to the members, past and present, with honor and gratitude as they have stewarded the land throughout the generations. I'm confident that we'll continue to work together in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Thank you. Let's move on to meeting our presenters today for our session. I'm happy to introduce Simon Ketchison, our Confident Learners Product Director. Simon leads the design and delivery of the literacy programs focused on improving educational outcomes for students across diverse communities. Simon brings over a decade of expertise in educational product management, client success, and implementation, with a proven track record in helping organizations meet and exceed their goals. We're also joined today by Erica Sutherland, a learning consultant in the Confident Learners program here at the Learning Bar. Erica taught with the Halifax Regional Center for Education for 31 years as an elementary classroom teacher, literacy coach, literacy consultant, and a reading and writing interventionist. That's quite the resume, Erica. She believes that a strong early start to literacy learning creates a solid foundation for all future learning and social emotional well-being. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Simon.
Thanks so much, Stephanie, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Some of our webinars are more of a presentation style. This one's going to be a little bit more fluid. Eric and I are going to show you around and share some of the stories that we've heard from students, teachers, school leaders as they engage in confident learners. So excited to show you around. Just to get us started, I do want to give you a brief outline of who we are, where we are from. So we're based here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, but we have staff across the country and an office in Australia. Our founder and president, Dr. Willems, started the company 20 years ago. This year is actually our 20th anniversary after having worked himself in social development for over 40 years. So he and the team have brought together a group of educators, researchers, literacy experts, and child development experts who all share this same vision, right? Giving every child the opportunity to thrive. So our literacy offerings, which range from professional learning to assessment and intervention, are all designed to meet the evolving needs of yourselves, Canadian educators, schools, districts, and leaders. So what we're going to look at today is the different components of the bottom half of this continuum, the confident learners elements, and in particular, three specific ones. Confident Learners is a multi-year program that integrates elements of professional learning alongside a systematic research-based intervention and literacy program with the goal of dramatically improving children's reading skills. So the major components of Confident Learners are on screen here. And I'll talk briefly about the leadership development and coaching and literacy coaching here on this slide, and then we're going to delve into the other three elements in a lot more detail today. So Confident Learners has actually been around for almost 10 years, but about 4 years ago, we undertook some major evolution and updates to the program based on the lessons learned in working with schools across the country, and in particular with First Nations schools. And two of those are leadership development and integrating that fully into the program, as well as intensive virtual support from our instructional team. So the leadership development was put in place because we saw the success that schools where the leader was deeply involved and fully engaged with the process exceed the results and really excel beyond those that sort of handed it down and then sort of walked away from it. So we provide leadership development sessions, monthly collaborative session amongst the leaders that are implementing Confident Learners, as well as one-on-one coaching at least once a month, but sort of as needed. Now that coaching and that support, of course, it comes from the lens of literacy instruction and being a leader in that realm, but it's about being an effective and intentional leader in a general sense, not just with respect to literacy. We all know how complex of a job it is to run a school, and how do we move out of that firefighting mode where we're just trying to keep our head above water. So that's an integral part of the new Confident Learners, as well as I mentioned, support from our instructional literacy coaching team. That looks like regular collaborative team meetings with each school implementing Confident Learners, where we get together and discuss what each child needs to learn, how they are doing, and then what do we do if they are struggling or if they've exceeded expectations, right? How do we meet the needs of each and every one of those students within our school? So we do that where our coaches support that conversation. We're going to have another presentation next week, which delves a little bit more into the theory and the overall structure, the scope and sequence of Confident Learners. So if you want to learn more, I highly encourage you to attend that session as well. Today, we'll look at kind of the nuts and bolts, and then we'll take a step back next week. So the three elements today: becoming a reader, the reading assessment, and the associated professional development. Becoming a reader is effectively the classroom materials, so a set of lessons, over 160 lessons that are aligned to the scope and sequence of Confident Learners, and also aligned to the reading assessment, right? So we've developed the curriculum, the scope and sequence of Confident Learners, and then we develop the reading assessment to ensure that it is, broadly speaking, aligned to that same scope and sequence, and we can thus use that to gauge, where each student is, what they need to learn next, and how they're progressing, which is most motivating, right? And then professional development is certainly not last and least, but we want to ensure that you as educators have all of the tools you need to be successful in the classroom, especially if you are undertaking a new way of teaching children to read, right? I know that I've heard it said teaching reading is rocket science, and it truly is. We certainly try to simplify it, but it is a complex process. There's no doubt about that. And that's where our team can come in to support. So just briefly, each of those elements, I mentioned the scope and sequence of becoming a reader. We've broken that out into three phases based on a 2018 paper by Castles, Russell, and Nation. That was kind of the inspiration for this revised model. And through those three phases, we kind of shift, you've probably heard of course, the simple view of reading or the Scarborough's reading rope. And the structure is broadly consistent with those, of course, with a slightly different emphasis in the early stages versus the latter stages. So in phase one, we're really focusing on phonology or coding skills, right? Learning the letter sounds, being able to decode, simple words, consonant, vowel, consonant words, etc., alongside a set of high frequency words. In phase two, we build on that to introduce additional representations of those sounds in print, so more complex representations. And we're also looking at morphology, so prefixes, suffixes, as well as introducing more and more comprehension, right? So there is comprehension right from the very beginning, but the emphasis shifts into phase three, where it's almost exclusively on reading comprehension, where we introduce 10 key strategies broken up into three categories around pre-reading, during reading, and after reading a text. We provide both fiction and nonfiction or informational texts as well in phase three. So that in a very brief nutshell is the structure that is woven throughout all aspects of confident learners. So the instructional materials, the assessment, and the professional learning. If you would like to learn more, and we'll certainly dig into this in a lot more detail next week at the same time. I mentioned for the reading assessment, right, we find that scope and sequence, and then we align the assessment items. The difference with the Phonics Advantage reading assessment, or PARA, is that it's designed as a systematic or a continuous assessment tool. And so unlike a pre-post model, what we actually do is assess as early as possible in the school year to establish a baseline, right? So this is where we started the year. And then we would encourage regular reassessment or, sort of gradual reassessment as students demonstrate the mastery of skills in the scope and sequence. And so that might look like assessing roughly, every child once a month, or kind of cycling through your class about once a month. But there's certainly room for professional judgment and based on, the observed pace of learning in the classroom. The real powerful thing about PARA, and we'll look at this in a moment, is again, it gives us these usable, actionable, meaningful data points about how each student is doing, what they need to learn next by virtue of the sequence of the scope and sequence. And then, as I said, one of the more powerful elements, how each student is progressing over time, which is really powerful and something we celebrate with a lot of frequency. So the last piece is professional development. And after this, we'll jump over and I'll show you around. So professional development, the core element we provide is systematic reading instruction. I realize my slide is not quite correct there. That should say systematic reading instruction. And this course is about bringing all of these elements together. So it presents the science of reading as well as the science of teaching, marrying these two together. So the effective classroom practice is necessary to actually implement the scope and sequence of confident learners. And then it breaks down by phase all of the elements within scope and sequence. So it's a very comprehensive course, and it also includes 100 activities on top of the 160 you already have access to, in order to, as you're completing the coursework, to immediately take that and put that into practice classroom. So Erica, as I jump over to the systems here, if you feel like you'd like to add anything, please don't hesitate.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, it really is bringing it all together and helping it be really available for the teachers and having all of those pieces within reach as they need them. So it is great to be able to find it all in one space.
Thanks. So the majority of our content is hosted in our learning management system. So this is something that every educator participating in Confident Learners would have access to. And you can see here the login. We'll jump in and show you exactly what you would see as a teacher participating in Confident Learners. So here are the elements that we just discussed, right? The professional development course, systematic reading instruction, and science of teaching. I should mention the science of teaching is less literacy specific and more about general effective practices in the classroom. So it's highly beneficial. It's just a bit a step back from the specific literacy instruction. The reading assessment, PARA, and you can see phases 1, 2, 3, as well as becoming a reader, phases 1 to 3. So let's start with the professional development. We'll kind of work backwards in the order that I just presented them. And so systematic reading instruction is broken out into a number of different modules. And we can see here, the first several are based on those core concepts around the science of reading and the science of teaching. Again, the instructional strategies, the general practices that are necessary. But then it's broken out into a section on each phase of the scope and sequence. So phase 1, 2, and 3, along with those strategies and activities for instruction around those skills. Let's go in and take a quick look at phase 1 here. So we can click in, and I will resume the course. So I've already been in here. And
Welcome to Module 4, Phase 1, Becoming a Reader.
I think I shared my audio. Did you hear that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't need to listen to it, but there's of course audio throughout. You can use that, disable it. You can speed it up. We built that in just to give you some flexibility. So what I wanted to show you was the breakdown here of some of the phase 1 skills, right? So the scope of phase 1 skills. And you can see, as I mentioned, phase 1 is primarily about decoding, right? Translating a word in print, its pronunciation. That being said, there are some prerequisite skills, right? Or very early reading skills, things that are actually assessed and covered with the early years evaluation pre-reading assessment. So that can be done prior to, say, grade 1 with confident learners. But these key skills are done at the early stages, and then we really launch into the coding skills.
And Simon, I'm just going to point out, as you guys are watching Simon maneuver his way through the materials, that menu on the left-hand side, teachers have found it really helpful because they'll go through the materials once initially, of course, as they're doing the coursework, but this allows them to navigate back to specifics that they're looking for. And so, you know, if they're jumping in specifically for phonemic awareness or for letter knowledge, they're able to do that. And then they can also move into the next module, which has activities in it, so that they're very well aligned together and teachers are able to find everything easily.
Thanks, Erica. That's a great point. So here again, we're looking at the prerequisite skills. So phonemic awareness, manipulate the phonemes of a spoken word. And you can see how these skills start to build together in a bit of a framework, right? Again, broadly consistent with things like the simple view of reading, Scarborough's reading rope, and other structures common to the science of reading. So just as a summary here, right, the scope of phase 1 skills includes mastering those prerequisite skills. We want them to be able to decode, identify and decode with the 44 phonemes of the English language. And that's about it. Now, there are elements of comprehension, as I mentioned, so reading short passages, sentences, and spelling. We'll take a look at that through the reading assessment as well. So that's a very quick look at the content of the learning content, right, of the systematic reading instruction course. I do want to jump out and show you also some of the activities and the other modules that are about that, you know, putting the theory into practice, right? So if we go look at module 5 here, strategies and activities for phase 1 instruction, we're going to see a subset of lessons with specific examples. You can also go to the bottom of the page here and see where we've listed phase 1, 2, and 3 activities. This is where they're all grouped together for quick access, right, instead of going into the course content itself. So we'll take a quick look at both of those. But if we look at strategies and activities for phase 1, start this. And let's go
Welcome
look
to
at
Module 5,
sound,
Strategies and Activities for Phase 1 Instruction.
the sound letter relationships. I thought that would remain muted when I switched from module to module. So let's take a look at that sound letter relationships or the phonemic awareness. So some examples here, right, around what that looks like. And some common strategies, right? So based on the scope and sequence, we introduce the most frequent or prevalent phonemes, right? We want to make sure that we're building on top of previously learned relationships. we look for ways to embed that in an ongoing basis, not just within our literacy block and sort of in that explicit instruction element, but throughout the day, right? And Erica, I'm sure you have many, many examples of what that would look like.
Yeah, so really thinking about, the scope and sequence in itself in order to help students to be able to work with manageable chunks of new learning. Also, it helps teachers, make sure that there's no gaps or to check to see if there's gaps. Before I started using science of reading, I tended to approach phonics instruction in a little bit of a haphazard way. And so really working with the scope and sequence helps me as a teacher to ensure that I'm not missing anything for my students, right? And one of the pieces that I really loved as I came to know this product is the fact that right from the first 5 phonemes that we begin to work with, students begin to create words and build small sentences and use the materials right away. They're very active and engaged. And I find that really helps with the students staying involved and being keen to move on to the next piece in their learning. So it's been really helpful.
Thanks, Erica. So just by way of an example here, this is a set of 5 activities around teaching sound letter relationships, excuse me. So identifying the sounds and names of lowercase letters through an active class-wide game. And we can click right here. Materials. You can see this is a common structure of all of the materials available with Confident Learners. We follow the structured lesson, right? What will we learn? What do we know? Watch me do it. Let's try it together. And then checking for understanding and giving that opportunity for independent practice. So every activity will have the same layout, same structure, as well as a section here on extending or making the lesson more or less challenging. We'll take a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say one thing that teachers have found. First of all, the structured lesson format is really helpful, but they've also found that they're able to bring those concepts back and use them for review or blend them with other structured lessons in order to help students make those connections between what they've already learned and what they're learning next, right? So having it all laid out that way and within the package really helps them to be able to organize their instructional planning in a way that makes sense to them and it makes sense to the students.
Thanks, Erica. All I was going to say there was we'll look at the lessons within becoming a reader as well. They may look a little bit different, but the structure is broadly the same. So I'll jump back out of the learning content here in systematic reading instruction and just show you that full list of activities at the bottom here. So if we look at phase 3, actually, no, sorry, I'll just keep with phase 1 here. You can see that they're broken up into those different skills, concepts about print, letter knowledge, and you can see there's both the materials alongside the actual activities available for you to print, spaced learning, and then those sound letter relationships. So there's that letter action lesson that we were just looking at alongside all of its materials. So if you just need a copy of one of them or, to print out some additional copies of materials, that's a quick way to get access to those. See here on the right, that same list. There's another example I like. Students will track print from left to right, top to bottom, and each button. Pre-reading skills. Go ahead.
And once teachers have finished kind of the coursework, they find this section down at the bottom with the lessons in it really helpful because they don't have to try and remember where they saw it in the coursework or where it came up. They just need to remember which phase it was in or possibly which topic, for example, letter knowledge or phonemic awareness, spaced learning, and they're able to just come in and find it quickly. So.
Indeed. Trying to make it as easy to access as possible.
And things are cross-posted as well. So the lessons are within the coursework, but they're also down at the bottom as lessons themselves so that they're easy to find. And you may find some lessons or topics are in a number of different modules.
That's right. Excellent. So that's a quick look at the professional development available through Confident Learners.
Simon.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, could we pop back into systematic reading instruction for just a second?
Absolutely.
And let's go down to the activities. Phase 1. And can we slide down a little bit? Keep going to decoding. There we go. Could you click on high five, 8-1? So one of the unique aspects of our materials that you don't normally see in many other programs is the fact that our materials have already, to some extent, been differentiated for your students. So 8-1 here is the lesson plan in order to be able to help the students be able to do the lesson high five. But if you look on that right-hand side underneath 8-1, you'll see 8-1M, which are the materials, and that would be the first mat. So that particular mat would be for students who are working with CVC words and the letters that are listed at the top. If Simon was to jump down a couple, you will notice that this is for a different set of letters. So teachers are able to differentiate the instruction. So if you have a class that has students who are very early in their phonics learning and you have students who are a little bit farther along, you're able to do the same lesson activity, but you're able to differentiate it. So everybody feels that they're playing the same game or doing the same activity, but really the instruction is tailored to where they are in their series of lessons. So I just wanted to highlight that piece because that's fairly unique from what I've seen in different programs.
Thanks, Erica. And it's a really good point, right? We need to be able to meet the needs of each and every one of those students. Well, how do we do that? And it's in providing resources and instruction that's differentiated to meet each of their needs. No easy task. Okay, let's go back out and we'll take a look at becoming a reader. So this is the additional classroom materials and lesson content that is available to you, and it's broken out into that scope and sequence here. So we have Becoming a Reader Phase 1 with modules of content that align to the scope and sequence. So there's those first 5 phonemes that Erica was referring to, A, R, T, N, and E. And then if I scroll down, you'll see Becoming Skilled Reader, Phase 2, and Becoming an Expert Reader, Phase 3. So I'll just go into some of the materials and resources here briefly to show you kind of what the supports are, and then we'll look at maybe an example here in Module 4. So under Getting Started with Becoming a Reader, we have a variety of different, introductory resources, right? So some of the content would be, again, broadly aligned or almost exactly from systematic reading instruction. So it's a bit of a refresher. We want to be able to call back to the learning that took place through that professional development. And then there's also a written scope and sequence. So again, it would approximate what you've taken or what you've viewed through the systematic reading instruction course. And then really importantly, and a very useful tool is a document that aligns the modules and the lessons in Becoming a Reader to the content of the assessment so that we can cross-reference and look at our data and say, okay, now I can go back to the instructional materials and pull from them at the appropriate place. So I'll just quickly look at the scope and sequence document and that Phase 1 alignment so you can have a sense of what that looks like. So again, we lay out that 3-phase model. This is what systematic reading instruction looks like. And this is the type of content that we'll be discussing at next week's webinars, right? So the scope of Phase 1 is learning how to decode words. And then we give some examples of what that looks like. This is a nice visual showing, decoding the word into the sound and then mapping that gradually over time to the meaning in our mental dictionary. Some further information about the phonemes and graphings, and then we list the explicit skills that we want students to learn and that are going to be assessed through the reading assessment. The sequencing, so this is these modules that we were just looking at, and we'll go back and look at Module 4. And then an outline of the reading assessment, right? So these are the challenges that we're going to be using to assess children as they progress through the learning content. And then there's a breakdown of the learning goals or objectives by each module for Becoming a Reader. So if we look at Unit 2 here and we see Module 4 that we'll go look at, we want students to work on the first 5 phonemes, A, N, R, Ran, T, 10, N as in net, E as in net, as well as 10 high frequency words. So we'll go take a look at that after the alignment document. So we can see here the left-hand column is the para content, and then over here is the Becoming a Reader content. So the first challenge first assessment item in Para is about concepts about print, and we have an entire module, module 1, dedicated to that. So if a student, perhaps in kindergarten or early grade 1 is struggling with some of those skills, we can draw on these lessons, right? In challenges 2 and 3, we are working on letter knowledge. And again, we have a module dedicated to this, module 3, so we can draw from that. This, alongside the content from systematic reading instruction, certainly provides you with many options and different ideas. It's not meant to be exhaustive. It's not meant to be comprehensive, right? There are always going to be many other excellent ways and lessons that perhaps you've already found to be effective. And that's where conversations build from in the collaboratives, right? With the guidance of our instructional coaches and the school teams. There's plenty of other ideas, and especially when we've tried certain things and they may not be working, how can we shake things up, try a different thing, try a new idea that we've seen to be effective elsewhere. So this is kind of this is one of the Bible documents, or the one of the main documents that I know teachers probably have a copy of on their desk. Let's go back out and look at one of the lesson modules here. At the first set of phonemes here, module 4. And I know there's one particularly popular lesson here. I love ants, which is Let's Go Climbing. And this is another example of what Erica was describing, where the materials for the activity are flexible so that you can kind of adapt them up and down the scope and sequence, up and down the sequence to meet the needs of a range of students in your classroom. So Let's Go Climbing. They're going to identify the sounds associated with those letters, right? Of course, that module. And you can see the materials. There are 6 different boards, sorry, and then a blank one that you can actually customize entirely to your needs. So we want students to play a game where they're practicing reading the letters and words on a word mountain, and it's suitable for a variety of different uses, right? So the lesson here, again, it's not, it is still a structured lesson, but at this early stage as well, it's very simple. And again, we have that extending a lesson, it's challenging. And then we have, whoops, let me zoom out here so you can see that whole game board. So there's board number 1. You can see we have A, R, T, N, and E in uppercase and lowercase. We have a different order with only lowercase letters. Then we have CVC words, right? Different order of CVC words. And then the last one, that blank one. Erica, have you seen? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say this blank one is usually very, very popular, especially, if you have a class with a lot of diverse needs. So I have seen teachers take this blank and use it with high frequency words. I have seen them use it with other CVC words that their students may be working on from modules beyond module 4. I was in a collaborative yesterday, and one teacher had actually adapted it as a timed activity so that she could get her students building that automaticity in their letters and in their decoding of CVC words. And she said she had great success with the little competitive aspect of it. So these blanks are really wonderful because they do help with that differentiation. They also help with being able to take a familiar game that students have done previously and attach it to a new skill. So maybe I'm up in around module 8. So now I have many more phonemes than just the first 5. So I'm going to tailor this to the students who are working at that particular module. But I still also have copies for my students who might not quite be there. One teacher that I've worked with created a bunch and laminated them all, and then she just had them available. So if she needed the students to be working on something because she was called out of the room, or she wanted to do an assessment or something like that, it was something familiar and ready that the students knew how to do. And she just ensured that everybody had a sheet that was at their learning needs, and they were able to go to it on their own because they already knew the task.
That's wonderful. It's always really exciting to hear how educators are adapting what we've provided and extending it, and we're always looking to learn from them as well, how we can improve our materials to better support. So thanks for that, Erica. So that's an example of some of the content in Becoming a Reader. We won't go through all of this in exhaustive detail, but I did want to jump back and show you a little bit about the high frequency words, because these are, of course, an integral component of any reading program, but this is a list specific to the Learning Bar developed by Dr. Willems and our team here. And there is a few different resources. So an overview, which is actually, again, call back to the content from systematic reading instruction. So what are they? Why are we teaching them? How have they been established? That's kind of the information, the knowledge that you need as educators in order to make effective use of again, the materials and information that we're providing. So I'll take a quick look at the high frequency word list itself. So you can see here, this is a combined list of phases 1 and 2, which is a total of 300 words. And we've taken some of the common Dolch and Fry list, for example, and extended those to ensure that we're covering most of the elements of the English language, right? So we have pronouns, articles, conjunctions, prepositions, etc. And each module, so module 4, starting at module 4, we'd have 10 high frequency words. And again, these are generally ordered by overall frequency, so the most frequent introduced earliest. Then there's also elements of things that tend to drop off if you just look at it by pure frequency, but they're quite clearly logically grouped together, right? So numbers 1 to 10, primary colors or the base colors here. And so that's what we would cover in phase 1. And then in phase 2, we actually review those high frequency words from phase 1, and then we start to extend that with additional ones from modules 7 through 15. These high frequency words are included in each module, but we also provide some general activities here that you can use, but they're tailored within each module to that specific set of high frequency words. So one of them is bad apple, where we take an apple or have a bad apple. And then the racetrack game. So there's a couple of different versions of a racetrack game, which is somewhat similar in nature to that let's go climbing and things like that, where you can do that as a small group or in pairs and race around the track, right? Introducing that little element of competition that we know is quite motivating. So there's module 4, module 5, 6, 7, and again, these are all available right in the modules themselves.
One nice thing that teachers find about the high frequency word list is the fact that we have so many different parts of speech in one list. So from that first set of 10 words that students do in module 4, they have enough high frequency words alongside the first 5 phonemes and the words that they're creating with those phonemes to be able to start writing sentences and reading sentences. So that decoding piece starts right away after the students just have 5 phonemes and 10 words. So that's one of the really great pieces that teachers like, because they're able to make it practical right away.
Yeah. Excellent. So being mindful of the time here, I'm going to jump out of the instructional materials and let's go over to the assessment, because I want to show you both the actual content of the assessment and then the reporting tools, which is probably my favorite part, if I had to pick one. So the reading assessment is broken out, as I said, into those 3 phases. And let's go into the first phase. But first, I'll just note that there is a self-directed training available. We provide that live, of course, and in a variety of different formats. But at the end of the day, the assessment is structured to be easy to pick up for whether you are a classroom teacher, an EA, other support staff, that we want anyone and initially during the pandemic, right, potentially even parents to be doing this assessment. So there is a built-in guided model that you can walk through that's not meant to be presented to the child, but it gives you additional cues and information about scoring and how to guide the assessment alongside the actual child version, which is the one that we use to present and assess. So I won't go into the demo version or the guided version, right? But just some general instructions. You can see what I've just described. There are 2 different versions. That training version, which has additional context and is a great way to familiarize yourself with each element, and then the child version. There is an audio built in, but what we find is that quite quickly we provide a written script if the teacher would prefer to do so, And that's invariably what they tend to do, right? Is you'll use that audio when you're becoming familiar with it, and then turn that off and give the instructions yourself. So the child version here, you can see a list of challenge 1 through 25. Each challenge is scored on a scale of 1, 2, 3, and 4, with a 1 and a 2 representing a stop. So we're going to stop there. The child hasn't mastered the skill or demonstrated proficiency. We're going to focus our instruction in that area. A 3 means they're approaching mastery. They've demonstrated a certain level of skill. We're not going to stop there. We're going to proceed to the next skill, but we're probably going to circle back and reinforce that, right? And a 4 being mastery. So I'll look at challenge 4 here, which is the first set of phonemes, right? And so it's not a direct one-to-one with that, say, module 4 in becoming a reader, but it's module 4, 5, and 6, right? So the first set of 10 phonemes and the soft and hard C.
We are going to play a game to see how many sounds of letters you can say quickly. I'm going to show you a list of letters, and you are going to say their sound as quickly as you can. If you think you've said one incorrectly, that's okay. You can say it again. Listen to me while I do some. A, s, k, o, t, I. Now I will say them quickly. A, s, k, o, t, I.
So we have a number of warm-up slides.
Now
first.
let's try some together. What is the sound that this letter makes?
So we'd ask the child to say it. Move on to the next one.
Let's try one more. What is the sound that this letter makes?
So again, we're not actually assessing, we're not scoring at this stage, we're just warming up.
I was going to say it very much follows the structured lesson format. We've set the goal for the child. We've told them what the purpose of the assessment is. We're modeling, so they're watching us do it. Then we have some guided practice, and we do all of that so that they will be ready for when they do the task independently in just a couple slides.
Thanks, Erica. That's a great point. And as students become familiar with the structure and the flow of the assessment, it becomes less necessary to do that warm up. They're very accustomed to it. So you can skip through these if you've reached that point.
All right, are you ready? When I say start now, you will start saying the sound that each letter makes, starting at where the red arrow is pointing. When you are finished a row, you then say the sound of the letters in the next row down, where the blue arrow is pointing. If you do not know the sound that a letter makes, that's okay. Skip over it and keep going. Okay, start now.
So we have 3 assessment plates in most cases where we're assessing letter knowledge and phonemic awareness and decoding and those sorts of things. So we would look for the number of errors made on this. Now there's a separate scoring sheet, and that guided version of the assessment actually will indicate how many errors you should be counting. And so if a student makes several errors here, we would score them a 1 and we would end the assessment there, right? If they were successful in completing this section, we would click on next.
I would like you to say these sounds as quickly as you can. Are you ready? Okay, start now.
And we'd ask them to read the next set, right? And same thing, if they made errors here, we would click on a score of 2. If they were successful, we click on next, and that would be the final plate on this particular set of phonemes.
Let's try some more. Please say these sounds as quickly as you can. Okay, start now.
Now this final plate is actually timed, and there we're trying to also gauge prosody or fluency, right? Their ability to say these sounds as quickly and fluently. So again, we'd score a 3 or 4 depending on the number of errors made or whether they completed this particular aspect within the time limit. But either one would mean we would progress to the next set of assessment items. And that will happen automatically. I'll jump through that. And then I do want to show you one other model or one other different type of challenge around reading. So challenge 5, the next one, right? We could continue on. You can stop at any time and pick it back up, right? There's nothing that says you have to do everything all at once. And especially if a child, for example, the first time you're assessing them, they are already quite proficient. You might break that up into several sessions because it could end up being quite long. The assessment, as I said, is done as a baseline and then continuous. The baseline can take 10 to 15 or 20 minutes. The longer it takes, it really is reflecting on the skill level of the child, right? And then after that, it might be as little as 2 to 5 minutes because they might only progress through one challenge. And one of the greatest compliments I think we've received with respect to the assessment is we've heard from multiple schools across multiple provinces that students are so motivated that they're coming up to the teachers and requesting to be assessed to be able to demonstrate their learning. And if that's not a good indicator of motivation, I don't know what is.
Simon,
I'll jump.
before we
Go ahead.
pop into the next challenge, can we pop open the detailed scoring sheet? Because that's something that
Yes.
teachers have really fallen in love with.
Mm-hmm.
So as students are going through the challenges, this detailed scoring sheet exists. It's about 20 some odd pages, which initially teachers thought, ooh, that's a lot of paper for, one for each student. But what one of my schools has actually done is they've created little booklets for each child. And so this data follows the child along. So for example, if there was a change in teachers partway through the year due to the fact that a teacher had to go off on parental leave or what have you, this actually will show whomever is coming in a really quick snapshot exactly how that child did on the assessment before they get started doing the assessments themselves. It's also a thing that the principal at that particular school has teachers bring to their meetings and stuff so that they have that firsthand knowledge of exactly what it was that the student knew and what the student was still working on. So if you were going to a meeting about providing resource support, or even, a parent-teacher meeting to really let your parents know, what they're still working on, this has become a really important document for a lot of those teachers. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that before you went on to the next piece.
Thanks. No, that's a really good point because I was talking about the scoring rule, right? The 1 to 4, which gives us that sort of slightly higher level indicator of where students are in the scope and sequence, and is highly, highly useful from that, snapshot perspective and the progress monitoring. But for the purposes of instruction, we really do need to get to that level of, well, of those phonemes, of these letters, which were the ones that this particular child was struggling with, right? And so we can be very, very intentional in reinforcing that.
And the other piece teachers like about it is if you look underneath with the pictures of the slides, the scoring rules are right there. So they don't have to keep going back and forth and trying to remember if it was one error or 2 errors or how to score it. It's all right there and they can put comments.
Yeah. Thanks, Erica. Definitely an important, critical document. I'm pleased that that's being well received. So I'll just go in real quick here and show you one other version of the challenges, which is within Para 1, we just have 2 passages where we're looking for accuracy, fluency, comprehension, which are 3 separate challenges, right? And so
I'm going to ask you to read a short story. I want you to read it carefully. You can pretend you're reading it to a friend.
we're asking them to read it out loud.
Okay, start now.
Friend Ivan, who likes bugs. Turns out Ivan is a spider. So for word accuracy here, the scoring is shown right on screen because it's kind of we're using the same passage to assess the multiple elements, right? So we can see the number of errors. Now you could use that detailed scoring sheet to actually mark exactly where those errors are made as well. And so we score word accuracy, then we would score fluency. So we have, again, guidelines here. There's more details in the scoring rules documents in the guided version of the assessment. This is just a refresher about what those scoring rules are. So let's assume that they've scored a 4. We'll write that score down on our scoring sheet and move to the next challenge, which is based on comprehension.
Have to score accuracy too.
Oh, thank you. See, I didn't do it in the right order. Whoops. I'm being too quick.
I'm going
There we
to
go.
ask you to read the story again. I want you to pay attention to what happens in the story. When you are finished, the adult working with you will ask you 3 questions. Okay, start now.
They can have as long as they like in this instance, right? This is about comprehension, not about fluency.
What does Ivan like to eat?
The audio there for a moment. So we'd ask 3 questions around identifying, interpreting, and inferring information from the passage. In the early stages, so para 1, phases 1 and 2, those questions are going to be a little more simple. In phase 3, we're really focusing on comprehension skills, so identifying explicitly stated information, inferring, and so on. When does Ivan eat bugs? And why does Ivan eat bugs? I probably didn't have that passage up on screen long enough for you to answer, but if you know the answer, feel free to put it in the chat. Okay. With the time left, I do want to go over to the data entry and reporting platform. While I'm jumping over there, Erica, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I just, having everything in one place. I think I've said this about 4 times now, so I apologize for sounding repetitive. But just trying to make things as easy as possible for teachers and being able to create those connections and alignments, right? So as Simon said, we can do the assessment. We can take a look at the alignment document, which will tell us exactly which module the students are working in. Then we can take a look at the scope and sequence so that we can see the learning objectives that are in that particular module. We can go into the modules themselves. All of that information will be listed there as well. But then you've also got both the systematic reading instruction and the becoming a reader lessons, where you can start to do that instructional planning to really target those pieces that the assessment told you the student or students need to have targeted. So it's really all kind of there within a few clicks.
Excellent. So this is the data entry and reporting platform. We can see we load into a dashboard that actually is fairly similar to the one in the learning management system, right? But the purpose of this is of course, very different. So this example here is kind of a year-end snapshot, right? Of a demo set of data. We can see there's about 100, well, not about, there's exactly 184 students. Those 184 students were assessed 1,182 times over the course of the year, right? Roughly 10 times each. There were only 5 students that were unassessed, could be due to attendance. At this level, we're just looking for quick stats. We're not really delving into that. We can see that the majority are still in phase 1, so maybe this is primarily some of the younger grades. And then down below, we have the option to enter scores directly, viewing the results and progress. There is a knowledge base and then a link back to that learning management system. So I'm going to click in through the reports here, and we'll go kind of drill down from top level straight down to the student level, and then I'll show you what the data entry looks like and hopefully leave some time for questions. So at this school, our Apple school, we have what we call our hot air balloon chart, or a balloon chart. And this is really meant to show progress at a high level in a way that's easily captured and then shared, right? Because we want this to be easy for your school teams to either reproduce and draw this on your board in your school at a place that everyone can see it, or print this out and put that up, or use this in a PowerPoint presentation, right? Which is what we find ourselves doing quite often. So we have the baseline to current. And so if this were last year, baseline would have been established probably near the end of the month of September. And then all that would remain static, right? The baseline data would be our starting off point. And then the data would move over time as assessments are completed and entered into the system. And so what we'd like to see is that this number would gradually decrease, right? The number of students in that very early stage would drop as they move on up and progress through the scope and sequence of all 3 phases, 1, 2, and 3. And so we can see that here, 35% of students were able to move from out of emerging on up through the other categories in phase 1, and that a quarter of students actually moved entirely out of phase 1 and through to phase 2. It's important to note that Confident Learners is not a grade-based curriculum, it's a skills-based approach. And so we don't like to talk about, say, phase 1 being the equivalent of grade 1, phase 2 the equivalent of grade 2, etc. Which can be, that's a different way of thinking about it, and it presents challenges, right, when we're trying to think about where a student should be. But our philosophy really is about meeting each child where they are, as well as teachers, right, and their knowledge in science of reading, etc., and building from there, right. And that's how we see growth and build momentum. So I'll just quickly through to phase 2. We can see there's a couple of students, or however many 8.7% is, in that gold benchmark of phase 2. So they're working on some more advanced letter sound associations. They're reading another set of high frequency words, and they're actually reading a third passage in phase 2 with accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. So that's a very high level summary and a great way to monitor progress across multiple classrooms. At the school level, this is just a general indicator of whether a student has been assessed at least once. So that's helpful at the baseline period, just to make sure that we're capturing as much data as possible. But then there's also some additional tools here to look at the number of students by the specific challenge they are currently working on, right? So in this case, we have 6 students working on challenge 5 and 1 on challenge 4. So that's that 30% that we saw on the balloon chart, right? So 7 students is about 30%, I guess, of the population of this school. We can see those 6 students in phase 2. And actually, if we click on that, we can see which students those are. So that's a helpful tool for school leaders as they're trying to understand their data across multiple classrooms. But then the real power comes on the classroom tab. And so again, this is a data set that was, roughly represents, a regular classroom or a grade 1-2 classroom at the end of the school year. And I'm sure, your first reaction is, well, students are kind of all over the place, right? And that's pretty typical, right? I think we all know that. I don't have to tell you that. And we can see, their grade. So in a split classroom, the number of times assessed, as we said, right? 10, 16 in some cases. That's pretty impressive. And then most recent assessment. So as I said, this is close to the end of the year. We can see some students being assessed all the way at the end of May. Now, one of the nice tools here is that we can actually sort these tables based on the challenges. So we can start to see here really quickly some groupings, right, where students are at around the same level. So here's one particular big group, right? They're working on challenge 5, which is decoding words with that first set of 10 basic phonemes, right? So that gives us some great information about, okay, I need to focus some instruction for these students here, but for these 2, they're actually working on decoding with some additional phonemes, right? So they could be doing the same activity or the same lesson, but be focused on slightly different aspects, right? Now we're short on time, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker here. The gray numbers just represent previous year scores, right? And so in some cases that might be due to perhaps a summer slide, but really what we want to be able to do is pick up where we left off the year prior, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. Now in this case, we have 5 students here who are complete all of the challenges in phase 1, which is wonderful. And if we go down, we'll see similar scores here in phase 2, much fewer, of course, and some of them may not yet have been assessed. We can sort that table as well, and we can see we have a couple of students that have just 1 challenge complete, and then 1 that's all the way through challenge 5 here. And same thing for phase 3, of course, in this specific classroom, no students have reached phase 3 just yet. There are also notes, which I'll come back to here in just a moment. I want to go to a different school and show you some examples. So in this case, you can see here, Arnie, you see those previous year scores, right? So last year, he would have ended off at around challenge 5, and we'd have a specific protocol for kind of picking back up and checking for any summer slide and then carrying forward, right? Because again, it's not grade-based, it's skill-based. It doesn't really matter which grade they're in. We want to be able to continue that growth trajectory. Our friend Maximilian here, though, was assessed about 5 times through late or mid-March, and you can see he's made some good progress. Now that green score is where he started the year, right? His baseline score, and the regular letter numbers after that are progress. When we click on Max, we can see his individual progress, right? We can see the number of times he was assessed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over the course of the school year, September to the end of June. And we see he's progressing quite nicely and perhaps on track to complete phase 1 there by the end of the year. We have the test history. You can see all of the scores and dates on which Max was assessed, and then notes as well, which are super helpful, especially when it comes to things like attendance or specific challenges, right? Support staff or school leaders can look at the individual child and say, oh, I see the reason that they may not have been assessed for a couple of months is, well, they haven't been available, right? They haven't been regularly attending. There hasn't been an opportunity to assess them. So I'm going to stop there because we are at the hour mark. That's a lot of information. Erica, if you'd like to add any final comments there, please feel free.
I don't think I have anything to add. I think we've thrown enough at them.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks, everyone. Stephanie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we just wanted to say thank you to, first of all, to Simon and Erica for sharing the all the amazing components of the Confident Learners Literacy Program. So this is quite impressive and just quite thorough as well. If you do have any specific questions about Confident Learners, please feel free to reach out to Simon. His email address is on the screen for you. I did want to give you a heads up about 2 other webinars we have coming up very, very shortly as part of our webinar series. So the next one is on December 5th and hosted by Simon and Erica again, so you get to see them again. So the next one is Simplifying Literacy Instruction, the 3-phase approach of the Confident Learners Program. So Simon touched on that a little bit earlier on in the session, and how this upcoming session will kind of dig deeper into the actual theory and the components of the program. Following that, our next webinar series is going to be in January after the holidays, and that one will be hosted by Dr. Wilms, and that is on January 21st, and Navigating Barriers to Help Canadian Students Thrive, Addressing 3 Wicked Problems. Our team, someone from our team will be sending out the webinar recording within the next couple of days. Within that email, there will be a link to register for these 2 upcoming sessions. So please feel free. We'd love to have you join those sessions and continue on this learning journey with us. So I'm not sure if we have any questions at the moment. Simon, do you think we have some time for questions?
Certainly, yeah. There was just one question, which was sort of a general one there in the Q&A, which was how do we get onto the website, or how do we get access to Confident Learners? And so if you're interested to learn more, I'd highly encourage you to reach out to our team to have a conversation about how you can gain access. And for Janet specifically, she's indicated an interest. We'll make sure that one of the team members follows up with her. Yeah.
Again, if you have any additional questions, reach out to Simon, and our team would be happy to help you.
We've actually got one more question there. Sorry, Stephanie. What grades does this cover?
Yeah, well, and like we said, it's not a grade-based program, right? So what we recommend is grades 1 to 3, and then it can be used in some of the upper grades up to around grade 5 before it starts to become a little bit less age appropriate. But for those older students who may not have mastered those foundational skills, right? It can be done in kindergarten. Some of the skills might be a little bit more advanced, but that's where the early years evaluation pre-reading screener fits that kind of space, right? So the pre-reading screener for kindergarten and Confident Learners in grades 1 to 3. Yeah.
All right, I think that wraps everything up for today. Thank you everyone for your time. We're so happy to have you join the session with us, and please look for that email in your inbox with the webinar recording and the registration link for the 2 other webinars we have coming up. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.